Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Let me just put this out here first that this is a really difficult case to listen to. So I would proceed with caution, to be honest with you. It's pretty graphic, it's pretty bad, and it involves a really young girl. So I just wanted to put that out there first before we got started. And if you think it's too much, please leave and come back for another one. And that's it. Junko Furuto was born in Misato on November 22nd, 1972. She attended Yashio Minami High in Misato. She was described by friends and loved ones as a very attractive girl who enjoyed a lot of attention, and as a result of this, she made many girls jealous. She didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs. Her parents were still happily married, and she was the middle child of two brothers. Junko was a junior at Yashio Minami High School in Saitama Prefecture in Misato. I'm sorry guys, by the way, if I'm butchering these names. I'm trying. On November 25th, 1988, at around 8:30 p.m., Junko was bicycling home from her part-time job. While en route to her home, she was knocked off her bike by a teenage boy named Shinji Minato in an attempt to create a diversion. It was at that point that his accomplice, Hiroshi Miyano, stepped in, pretending to be an innocent bystander. After helping her up off the ground, telling her, "That one's crazy. I've been threatened by him with a knife a short time ago. You may still be in danger. Let me walk you home." Shinji Minato was born in December of 1972. His father was a pharmacist and his mother was a nurse. He started causing problems in elementary school where he would threaten physical harm and shoplift. By middle school, his verbal and physical abuse had intensified. By the time he reached high school, his bad behavior was at an all-time high. He would skip school, not come home at night, and was violent at home. That summer, Shinji and his older brother would use their bedroom as a hangout for local thugs. Since their parents were always working, this was an easy feat to pull off. He was placed under protection for driving a motorcycle without a license, and because of his violent behavior at home, his parents were very scared of their son. Hiroshi Miyano is described as the leader of the crew. Both of his parents worked and the family was well off. Just like Minato, Hiroshi started showing aggressive behavior in elementary school by stealing, bullying, and vandalism. He was really good in middle school. He didn't get into any trouble for the entire 3 years and devoted himself to learning judo, a Japanese form of martial art. After middle school, he went to a high school famous for judo. Because he was bullied so badly by the seniors, he left the judo club halfway into freshman year, and 6 months later, he left school. He started working to learn how to become a tiler, but around that time decided to join a motorcycle gang. While in the gang, he committed several crimes such as causing bodily injury, unauthorized entry into buildings, and theft. He was placed under probation shortly thereafter. After leaving the motorcycle gang, he appeared settled for about a year or so, continuing to learn tile work and pleasing his boss. He started living with his girlfriend and saving money to fulfill his dreams of marrying her. In May of 1988, he earned his driver's license, and in July of that year, his father presented him with a brand new car. Around August, Miyano became dissatisfied with his low wages at work and one day decided to just stop showing up. Through a former classmate, he became involved with a gang called Yakuza. He began working as a takia, selling fake goods, running an Yakuza office, and around this time also began inhaling paint thinner. While on his walk home with Junko, he began to gain her trust. Unlike a random girl, Hiroshi had a vendetta against Junko. After he tried to date her, and Junko politely rejected him, he lured Junko to a nearby warehouse. Once there, he dropped the Caring Civilian Act and told her, "I'm his mate and we are both Yakuza. If you obey me, I will spare your life. Let me have sex with you. If you scream, you're dead." He then proceeded to rape Junko. Afterwards, he took Junko to a hotel by taxi, where he raped her again. Hiroshi Miyano had two more accomplices, Joe Kamasaku and Yasushi Watanabe. Joe Kamasaku was born in May 1971. His parents separated when they were very young. He was primarily raised by his mother along with his sister. He only spent 2 months with his father when he was 10. Growing up, he was good at sports and didn't show any signs of being a troublemaker. In January of 1986, Kamasaku got into a skiing accident where he fractured his right foot. Unable to continue with sports after the accident, Kamasaku became lazy with his studies and was expelled from high school in November of 1987. Yasushi Watanabe was born in December 1971. His parents separated when he was 4 and then divorced 2 years later. His father was killed in a car crash shortly after the divorce. He was raised by his mother and sister after his father's death. Watanabe enrolled himself in night school in April of 1986, but stopped going to classes just 1 week later, before leaving school for good in September. In October of 1986, he was placed under probation for domestic violence. He was hit with more minor criminal offenses in June of 1987 and March of 1988. All four of the boys went to the same middle school. Hiroshi Miyano was the oldest, followed by Joe Kamasaku and Yasushi Watanabe in the grade below, and Shinji Minato in the grade below that. In October of 1988, the boys all started hanging out at the Minato residence, and a small gang of violent teenagers began to form. After raping Junko for the second time, Miyano called Minato and told Kamasaku that he had succeeded in raping the girl. The next morning, November 26th, Miyano with Junko met Minato, Kamasaku, and Watanabe at a park. While there, they decided to abduct and imprison Junko. They brought her back to Shinji Minato's house, where they easily overpowered her and repeatedly gang raped her. On November 27th, Junko's worried parents asked for police intervention. The gang forced Junko to call her home 3 times between the end of November and the middle of December to tell them that she had run away from home, was safe with friends, and wanted the police to stop the search. At the beginning of December, Junko tried to phone police while the gang was all asleep, but was caught by Miyano before she was able to say anything. Police immediately phoned back, but Miyano told them that it was a mistake. Furious at the attempt, the gang began to torture her. By day 11 of Junko's captivity, she had been kidnapped, kept captive in a house, and posed as one of the boys' girlfriends. Raped over 400 times in total, forced to call her parents and tell them she had run away, starved and malnutritioned, fed cockroaches to eat and urine to drink, forced to masturbate, forced to strip in front of others, burned with cigarette lighters, and set off fireworks in her ears, mouth, and vagina. Foreign objects inserted into her vagina and anus, including a still-lit light bulb. By day 20, Junko had been severely beaten up countless times. Her face was held against concrete ground and jumped on. Her hands were tied to the ceiling and her body was used as a punching bag until her damaged internal organs made blood run from her mouth. Her nose filled with so much blood that she could only breathe through her mouth. Dumbbells were dropped onto her stomach. She vomited when she tried to drink water because her stomach couldn't accept it. She tried to escape and was punished by cigarette burning on her arms, flammable liquid poured on her feet and legs, then lit on fire, bottles inserted into her anus, causing injury. By day 30, she was unable to walk properly due to severe leg burns. She was beat with bamboo sticks. Fireworks were inserted into her anus and lit. Oh my God. Her hands were smashed by weights and her fingernails cracked. She was beaten with a golf club. She had cigarettes inserted into her vagina and forced to drink her own urine as they left. She was beaten with iron rods repeatedly. She was forced to sleep outside on the balcony in the winter. Skewers for grilled chicken were inserted into her vagina and anus, causing bleeding. By day 40, she had hot wax dripped onto her face, her eyelids burned by cigarette lighter. She was stabbed with sewing needles in the chest area. Her left nipple was cut and destroyed with pliers. Hot light bulb was inserted into her vagina. Heavy bleeding from the vagina due to scissor insertion. Unable to urinate properly. Injuries were so severe that it took an hour for her to crawl downstairs to use the bathroom. Her eardrums were severely damaged and extreme reduced brain size. By day 40, she had begged her torturers to kill her and get it over with. January 1st, 1989, Junko greets the New Year's Day alone, with her body mutilated and unable to move from the ground. Day 44, January 4th, 1989. The 4 boys beat and mutilated her body with an iron barbell, using a loss at the game mahjong as a pretext. She was profusely bleeding from her mouth and nose. They put a candle's flame to her face and eyes. Then lighter fluid was poured onto her legs, arms, face, and stomach, and then lit on fire. This final torture lasted for a time of 2 hours. Junko Furuto died later that day in pain and alone. This is just awful. Oh my God. There are just no words for this. Less than 24 hours later, on January 25th, 1989, the gang members wrapped Junko's body in 2 blankets, pushed her into a large travel bag, and taped it up. Hiroshi Miyano borrowed a cement mixer and a truck from his former employee. They got an oil drum that was used in the neighborhood for garbage, placed the bag that contained Junko's body inside of it, threw in some concrete blocks, and filled the drum with fresh concrete. The drum was taped into a large black litter bag, and at around 8 p.m., the drum was loaded onto the truck. The 4 thugs had planned to drop it in the sea, but on the way, they passed an empty space near a development site and just abandoned it there. On January 23, 1989, Hiroshi Miyano and Joe Kamasaku were arrested for the gang rape of a 19-year-old woman in December. On March 29th, 2 different officers from the district that Shinji Minato's home was in came down to interrogate them. Women's underwear had been found at their address, and the police suspected them of theft as well. There was an unsolved murder of a mother and her 7-year-old son in that district also. During the interrogation, one officer decided to take a shot and ask Miyano a trick question. saying you mustn't kill someone you know. Miyano assumed the officer was talking about Junko, and because Kamasaku was in a separate interrogation room, he also assumed that he had already confessed. To which he replied, "I'm sorry that we killed." The officers were astounded, as it was simply a trip. After getting a full confession, the officers went to the empty space where they found a drum with a strange smell. The drum was lifted onto a truck with a crane and brought to the station the following day. When officers opened the drum, they found the badly decomposed body of Junko, as she had been dead for over 2 months at this point. Her body was swollen and facial features were so unrecognizable due to severe disfigurement that she had to be identified by fingerprints. On April 1st, Shinji Minato was arrested for another sexual assault and then rearrested for murder. The arrest of Yasushi Watanabe followed shortly thereafter. Junko's funeral was held on April 2nd, 1989. One of Junko's friends spoke at her memorial saying, "Jun-chan, welcome back. I have never dreamed that we would see you again in this way. You must have been in so much pain, so much suffering. The hobby we all made for this school festival looked really good on you. We will never forget you. I have heard that the headmaster has presented you with a graduation certificate, so we graduated together, all of us. Jun-chan, there is no more pain, no more suffering. Please rest in peace." Despite the shockingly brutal nature of the crimes, the identities of the 4 perpetrators were protected due to the fact that they were minors. On July 12, 1991, the Tokyo High Court sentenced them as follows. Hiroshi Miyano was sentenced to 20 years. He was released in the summer of 2009, was rearrested for fraud in 2013, but after insufficient evidence, he was released without being charged. His mother sent Junko's family about $425,000 after the sale of her house. Joe Kamasaku was sentenced to 5 to 10 years indefinite term. He was released in August of 1999. He married, divorced, and became close to the Yakuza gang again. In May of 2004, he was arrested for the attack, abduction, and imprisonment of a man. During the attack, he boasted about how he had already committed murder and knew how to coax the police and the prosecutor. He was given a 4-year sentence for this attack. It has been alleged that his mother vandalized Junko's grave because she ruined her son's life. Minato was given a 5 to 9 year indefinite term. Yasushi Watanabe was given a 5 to 7 year indefinite term. It was also reported that the gang members invited around 30 youths into Minato's room when she was a prisoner to rape her, as well as also being reported that around 100 people knew about the imprisonment, and one young girl even came and doodled on Junko's face. During the hearing, one spectator in the gallery fainted while the court described the brutal violence and torture Junko had to endure. The judge asserted that there were no words that could fully describe the pain and suffering Junko had to endure, and the judge had some very strong words for these monsters during sentencing, telling them, "The exceptionally grave and atrocious violence inflicted upon a blameless victim, the inhumane brutality that can be hardly found an example in the history of crime, the erratic and relentless violence, rape, and torture, no humanity, no respect for fellow human beings whatsoever. Murdered so brutally at the young age of 17, the victim's soul must be wandering in torment." It is reported that Junko's mother suffered a mental breakdown after learning about the details of what her daughter had to endure. "I can't even begin to imagine the pain her mother and family went through, and I pray I never have to." As we are coming up on the 33rd anniversary of Junko's death, please try to keep her family in your thoughts and prayers. On a lighter note, the location where Junko's body was found abandoned has been developed and is now a park. And the Minato family home, where Junko spent the last 40 days of her life, was demolished, rebuilt, and a new family currently resides there. So if you're still here, thank you. Honestly, I can't even believe this was real life, but I thank you for your support. Please leave a like, please leave a comment. It would mean the world to me. It truly would. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And until next time.